Committee on Rules is back in order. We are now on the second round. Second round is 5 minutes each. So we will begin first with Senator Perez, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this question is for the acting superintendent, if she's still online.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Good morning. So what is the GDOE proposed budget for 2024? Or do you have that available for us?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay. Is there an estimate, maybe to the panel, is there an estimate?
I believe it's 287 million.
287 million. Okay. So of that 287, is there any capital improvement projects included in that?
Generally, we get funding for, the Sports Facilities Fund. Capital improvement projects, no, not in that source of revenue.
Okay, so the upcoming proposed budget does not have capital improvement projects included in it?
No.
Okay. So I think that really goes to show that this bill is even more important, considering that the state of the schools are in.
This is it right here.
So, yeah, I mean, 287, I recall last term, there was I think the same proposal, but it got chopped because I think there was some, I guess, concession that the federal funds could be used for capital improvement projects. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so I know, fast forward, it has changed because the reprogramming has taken place with ARP.
That was the strategy, yes, correct.
Okay. And so I think the acting superintendent mentioned that, with the budget, upcoming budget proposal, that it will fund, help be in compliance with the Adequate Education Act. So I'm just kind of confused because if part of the Adequate Education Act requires to be in compliance with sanitation, and yet the budget proposal does not, for the most part, have any capital improvement projects. I feel like, yeah, so how is that going to happen with the budget proposal at 287 million?
I'm sorry, Senator, can you go ahead and repeat that question?
Sure. So, I mean, you just confirmed that the budget has minimal capital improvement projects in it.
Correct.
I guess I failed to see how that is going to address the Adequate Education Act, considering, the issues that have come to light recently, as well as the facilities master plan that highlighted the deferred maintenance. So can you explain how
So
budget
formulated in the budget is the ask. I think we're going in at $287 million. There's generally personnel, a carve out for critical contracts to support the schools. Major line items include our power and our utilities. In terms of the capital improvement projects, the reason why it's not line item budget for and requested in the current year is because we do have those funds that are aligned that we're appropriating towards the CIP projects. But everything else, I'll have to go back to the notes and go back to the submission. Everything else should be covering the 14 points. And there should be a line item, and we can get that information to you.
So again, does the ARP funds, is it sufficient to cover all those points?
It's not only the ARP funds that we're relying on to cover the points, it's the utilization of the local budget plus the ARP funds.
But I think we just heard that the deferred maintenance is at 130 million. And currently, my understanding is that we are at 100 million, potentially less.
The deferred maintenance years ago was 110 million. We just established that escalation will have those costs increase. Because it's a dated assessment, there absolutely has to be current risk assessments. What we've established is a reappropriation or reallocation of our our ARP fundings to CIP and maintenance. That gets us up to about 136. So with that, there's already expenditures that we have offset, or not offset, but already expenditures that we've already established and expended from ESF and some from ARP. So full accounting will have to be done in terms of what's expended to date versus how much is remaining to be expended. And we're looking at, again, 130 million Specifically, though, CIP is going to have the largest carve-out of that at about 114.
Okay, so again, what is the price tag to be in compliance with the sanitation rules and regulations?
Go ahead.
So Senator, if you're talking about custodial services, we're about 3.1 mil.
Actually, I'm not sure if you're aware of the rules and regulations that have been on hold, but there's a whole listing of items, you know, it's everything in the facilities to even on the exterior grounds. So has DOE estimated the price tag to be in compliance for all schools?
Oh, so are you referring to the current DEH review of the schools?
No, I'm referring to the upcoming rules and regulations. So what you were graded on was, I think, the existing rules and regulations,
Right,
not
right.
the one that they've put on pause until next year.
Okay.
So with Bill 29-37, we're pushing up the timeline to be in compliance by the school year
Right.
2023, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So has the price tag been estimated to address being in compliance with those rules and regulations?
No, we haven't sat down and done computations for those yet.
Okay, so the 130, what
But-
is it, the 130 plus price tag is based on the old regulations, not the current ones. So now we're looking at potentially a higher price tag. Okay. Okay, I think that's why this bill is more critical then, because, you know, that hasn't been addressed in the current estimates, cost estimates. Yes, did you have something to add, Ms. Higa? Oh, no. Okay, all right, thank you. This question is for OFB. Sorry, we didn't forget you. So in the bill itself, it talks about general fund, right? So the money is going to come from general fund. So I guess in your understanding, what pot of money is being used?
So in the bill's intent, it uses anticipated surplus projected for this current year, FY 2023. So pretty much based on BBMR CRER for this year, it's, well, we cited January's own, but for the February, it's showing a 45 million surplus. So that's the amount that or source of funding that we're using for this bill.
Okay, so it's basically unappropriated funds, because the legislature did appropriate some of those surplus funds, correct? In our last budget cycle. So these are unappropriated funds, is that correct?
Correct.
And so do we need to clarify the language, do you think, in the bill to address that, or is it automatically understood that it's going to be the unappropriated surplus revenues?
I mean, we understand that it is using the surplus, so I believe there's no need.
Okay, and I guess keeping it broad, right, could also mean if we're not really specifying it, there's also something called lapse funds, right? Is that potentially a pot of money for those agencies that don't use up, their lapsed funds, or the funds that they lapse, I should say?
For GDOE.
Yeah, because the way the bill reads is that 30 million is appropriated from the general fund. So it doesn't really specify which pot it's coming from.
Okay, so if we're using GDOE's lapse funds, I believe if they have continued appropriation for that, they could use it.
Yeah, but in the bill itself, it states general fund. It doesn't specifically say GDOE's lapse funds. It could be any agency's funds.
I wouldn't advise that, Senator.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying that the wording is very broad, that it's not just surplus, unappropriate. I'm reading this as it could be anything. But your interpretation, it's the surplus.
Yes, in the beginning of the bill, it shows the intent, so that's where we're getting the source of funding. However, if you do believe that we should specify more, I feel there's no problem with that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Perez, for those questions. Next, we'll go to Senator Brown. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I actually don't have any more questions with regards to this round. I just very much want to see our continued engagement with DOE. I think in the fact of providing these funds and also wanting to see that the ARP funds are expended in a timely fashion, and we actually see these repairs and upgrades to the schools that are needed. Certainly look forward to our active engagement with our oversight chair, Senator Barnett, in continuing this dialogue with our Department of Education so that we certainly can see improvements, particularly with regards to the physical maintenance of the schools that are lacking at this point. So look forward to that. Thank you very much for coming down this afternoon and look forward to continued dialogue with you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sujus Matsi, Senator Brown. Senator Jesse Lujan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to reiterate again what I asked, and it's been asked over and over again regarding these monies. Now, it's been said over and over again that, yeah, you wouldn't mind having this money. You would prefer that it be on an annual basis for maintenance and all that. So if we give you this money now, would you be able to put it in a lockbox? Because on a daily basis, we're getting calls from teachers about their needs, about the conditions of their classrooms, and they said they would report it to their school leader, and that's how far it goes. Sometimes things are addressed, most of the times they're not. So if we're able to do something like this, and you have it in a lockbox, and you have the latitude to use some of these monies for things of that nature, then there wouldn't be any hesitance in the part of the school leadership to be able to request some funding, to be able to fund these things. Would you be able to do something like that? I mean, and that way, you've got this money, you're not waiting for another fiscal year to be able to request for it, because it might not be there. Again, you know, this is unprecedented that we're having these funds because of my previous stint in the legislature is always trying to find the funding source to be able to put in and take corrective measures and actions in regards to the shortfalls. Now we have this, we're saying, can you keep it? Can we, you know, because you're telling us you don't trust yourselves in doing that. So would you be able to keep it and then be able to, again, rectify some of these things that are happening? And they may not be major infrastructure challenges, but just regular, everyday classroom challenges that they may have. Help alleviate that. Now, would that go a long way to alleviating some of those challenges?
Any infusion of cash is gonna be significant for GDOE. In terms of the lockbox, I like to understand the details and the mechanisms of that. But one of the things, just for the record, again, it's not that we are, again, the 30 million, if you're gonna give us that amount or any amount to support us, that's one thing. What we're asking for is, in addition to the one-time lump sum amount that you're giving us, consider, and we're asking that you guys consider a dedicated source of funding in a continuous appropriation so that it's not just a one-shot deal, that in addition to anything that we're getting today, that on the budget cycle, on the Appropriation Act, that we also have something for sustainability.
Couldn't you do that yourselves in the sense that this is what your yearly or your quarterly maintenance needs may be? And I don't mean major infrastructure needs, but I'm just saying, you know, your regular day-to-day operational needs in the schools and things of that nature. That this is the funding source that you have, and this is what your annual or your quarterly, maybe your quarterly needs are. And couldn't you do that way? I mean.
If the mechanism works, if you provide the mechanism for us to have these funds, yes, and then we don't have Phil trying to do $30 million of CIP with, you know, with the current procurement status and all the other hundreds of millions that we're spending, that if we can go past, I don't know if there's a time expiration or effectiveness and when these funds expire, But if there is a provision for you guys to give us these, access to these funds and have it, yes, so that we can manage and keep it, yes.
Okay, I think we'll be able to do something like that. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Senator Lujan. Minority Leader Frank Blas Jr., you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, once again, thank you for being here. You know, it's very, very, very interesting is in these discussions that we've been having basically all day, is so unprecedented that if this were not GDOE, if this was GMH, or if this was Department of Corrections, or any agency, entity within the government of Guam, they'd be salivating at the mouth and just trying to figure, okay, yeah, please, give it to us. And so you got to understand our confusion as to this opportunity. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I hope that, you know, as a result, or how we got to this opportunity never happens again. But that being said, is here it is, okay? You know, we want to be able to address it. We have now the ability to be able to address it. You know, I appreciate the confidence that we all have in being able to do this. The question that I have, and question that I posed earlier, is whether or not you're confident in the ability to be able to expend and to use up this money and complete these projects before the timeline, before the deadline ends, right? Are we that confident, recognizing that if we may not have, or because of construction activity or as out of the buildup, that we may not have the resources or the companies to be able, it's one thing to be able to put out a bid, but if the companies don't bid because they're working on other projects, then we can't meet our timeline. Is that a consideration?
Yes, Senator, we feel confident that we will be able to do this. I reached out to the Guam Contractors Association, and Mr. Martinez set up a meeting of about 40 contractors who are interested in putting in bids for these projects, whether to do it by schools or by regions or as a whole. But they're definitely very interested. We've also heard that people have been hearing them talk about it in the community. So, and these are individual contractors, by the way, who do not have any jobs right now inside the base. And that was who we had requested for. And then the timelines that we set up for ourselves. And yes, we were worried about procurement, but we were able to work with the Attorney General himself, who then will designate Fred Nishihara to work with us when it comes to the procurement of our school facilities. So we do feel very comfortable and confident, you know, with that. And so, and we're really sticking to our calendar to make sure that, you know, we stay on track.
I don't mean to get anybody in trouble, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much for that response. But you may want to talk with your management team when you get back in as far as the confidence, because that wasn't the body language I was seeing when you were prior to you responding. Okay. That said, and, you know, that said, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate that. And yes, you know, we heard and we're confident, and we want to. I don't want to say that we shouldn't. We want to be able to be confident, and we should be confident. It's based on current activity and based on experience. You know, I've heard a number of people say, yeah, we are able to do the job, and then when the job comes up, they're nowhere to be found, or because they've got other projects. And that's, you know, that's happening, okay? And so let's cross our T's and dot our I's with regards to consideration. I'm not saying it's got anything to do with the money. This has got everything to do with the timeline, okay? The money can be there, but the timeline can be met, and if there's a way that we can help to be able to mitigate that timeline, okay, then maybe we do so. I think along those lines, we got to look forward. We got to anticipate that you're going to be able to receive some funding. and that you're going to be able to now have more funding to be able to do more of the projects. Well, by the way, with all the money that you're being able to have, the $284 million in one of the money you have for CIP, will that cover all the projects that you want to cover? Assuming that this is the money that we got.
Senator, I don't think so.
Okay.
Simply because of the age of the buildings.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of unknowns, mainly sewer lines,
Sure.
embedded pipes in concrete that were as-built at the time.
Okay.
That are failing. So those are unknown at this point.
So yeah, you go in there and you want to change, you want to change the sink, then you find out that the sink is connected to a corroded pipeline that's got the whole system, so then now this whole thing is changed. So then you got now a plumber who says he's willing to do this, but now he doesn't know how to do the plumbing in there. Then you have to look for all those people. So it's clear that this money, no matter, even with this money, all the money that you got, okay, is clearly not enough to be able to address all the issues that you would like to address and think you possibly need to address as a result of this thing. Is that correct?
I think it'd be safe to say, yeah, it's just not
Okay.
going to be enough.
So in anticipation with that, and I thank Madam Speaker, that Acting Superintendent, that you're there and you're speaking to presumably Department of Education officials. Has there been any discussion and any request to be able to see if you can get a waiver or an extension of your deadline?
No, I'm in a separate meeting as well with
Okay.
the chief state school officers. And we had met with the Secretary of Education. And one of the updates, of course, is that they don't anticipate that there will be an extension, that that when the deadline comes, that will be basically monies unused will be returned.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I'm sure Mr. Cardona, but at the same time, my father's always told me, okay, if you never ask a question, the answer will always be no. Okay? If you ask the question, 50% chance it could be yes. So guess what? I'm going to ask for the request for you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. Minority Leader, Senator Frank Blas. Next, we'll have Senator Chris Dueñas. You have the floor.
Just Monsi, Madam Chair. Once again, I just want to highlight the excellent job that our colleagues have done. So much good work that I don't have any more questions. And I want to respect the time of everyone here who has a lot of duties and responsibilities, and to get back to work. And I'll end with help is on the way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Up next is Senator Parkinson. You have the floor, sir.
Point of privilege, ma'am, I'm having a little bit of a coughing fit.
Sure.
Can I make one of my colleagues go first?
Oh, absolutely. I
Thank
see
you, ma'am.
you're having some difficulty. Okay, no worries. Senator Chris Melifunction Barnett, you are next to ask questions, sir. You're next. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm good. I think
Okay.
I'm not saying I've heard enough, but I have heard enough. I just want to thank you guys for coming out, and also Acting Superintendent Wampet. I know it's probably just close to 1 in the morning over there in Washington, D.C. And I know schools are
It's
getting out.
2:09.
2:09.
It's
Thank
2
you.
a.m.
Thank you. So we're gonna give you this money whether you like it or not, and that's that. All right? Because I'm not gonna be able to sleep good tonight if I hit my pillow and I know that we didn't do everything that we can for the state of education. I don't want to speak any empty words. We made a commitment. That's the exact reason why we called this emergency session. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Cooper, nurse. Also, ma'am, thank you so much. And Phil, thank you guys. Please, Dai Salin, and we got your back here at the 37th Guam Legislature. Sidos Masi.
Well, Senator, thank you very much. You appropriate it, we'll accept it.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good morning.
Thank you, Sabina, be my go pago.
Sijus Masi, Senator Barnett. Speaker Therese Terlaje, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. So the bill currently says they're appropriating $30 million from general fund to Department of Education for the purpose of repairs and maintenance of school infrastructure. I want to ask you about that language. Is that a was that adequate to meet your needs? Do we need to add things like, you know, equipment or supplies, or this cover everything that you think you might need?
That's the language that caused him some concern, and we were seeking to broaden that. Because again, what's going through the procurement, what's going through the assessment, what's being frontlined
Yes.
is federal funds due to the expiration. So if you can provide, perhaps, expand that use of those funds so that that can be something that we can consider to cover other areas of need.
Can you give us some recommendation?
Yeah, but
What about the purchase of equipment, repair
yes,
materials?
Yes,
or
Senator. Materials, equipment, all those
supplies.
types of things, supplies, yeah.
Supplies, okay. And so repairs and maintenance of school infrastructure, is infrastructure okay? Or do we need
yes.
to say anything different, like? Does this allow you for the contracting of services, like trash? Or, I'm sorry, what is
So,
the other thing they're doing, bush
As
cutting?
it currently refers to infrastructure, I don't, because trash is more of like an operational type activity, so
Well, how about
maybe-
for purpose of repairs and maintenance of school infrastructure? Yeah, so what do you think? Maintenance of school infrastructure?
yeah,
Yes, yeah.
that should cover.
Cover?
Yeah.
Okay.
And possibly something just to generally support the facility needs of our school district,
Yeah.
right? Because there's grounds maintenance, there's custodial services, there's what Phil's looking at in an additional contract to get that kind of facilities and maintenance right now launched off with, what do you call that, Phil? The skilled workers,
yeah.
to bring in some skilled workers.
Maybe we should also add language there based on the public health inspection, because they look at everything. So when you put down, the material supplies, materials, equipment to be able to address, the public health inspections.
Sanitation requirements?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to ask, so we talked about contract support, right? That you want on an ongoing basis, that's your new strategy, is to enter into these contracts. But we had this parent PTO hearing, and the parents, they seem to point to those contracts to be not responsive to the needs of the schools necessarily, right? Like we've got contracts for groundswork or bush cutting. They're saying it's not done regularly, or they miss patches, and then they're not able to get response fast, or the school principals are not able to get response fast because they got to work with downtown. And they gave us many examples of that. So kind of like there's a long wait because we're doing a big centralized contract as opposed to a school basis, meet all your needs, right? So I don't know, I'm not gonna fix that now, but I just wanted to make sure that you heard all those complaints, and that I know that the superintendent, Speaker Wampat, said that she was aware of those things and that she was going to make sure in your next round of procurement that those are addressed. And then similarly, can you just show us or explain for me if there is a way that I'm looking for the list of complaints from principals to central, right? And then from central to the vendors, or what is your framework for that type of thing, and how are you ensuring you're going to get response on these types of things? Because the principal's answers to us are that, they send in what they're supposed to do, and then they wait. So if you could just maybe talk about that a little bit?
Well, we have a system called Munis, and that's where the work order is initially inputted by the schools for whatever they're requesting. It could be self-help, where they're requiring paint out of the warehouse, where we pick it and they come by and pick it up for their use. It could be for a service or a repair, where we send a plumber, if that's the case, to address that. So this is the system that is used to perform this communication of need and address the communication of need. In my time, the availability of supplies was a major issue. I've got a big indefinite quantity bid that still has to go through procurement. In the meantime, I'm doing blanket POs that'll get us to several vendors, because at any one time, one vendor might be out. You have an opportunity to go with an alternate vendor. So we have those in place to get those going. We're also doing blanket POs directly for the schools' use, for their schools, for low-hanging, what we call low-hanging fruit items, activities. Doorknob replacement, door stopper, door closer, simple, low-skilled requirement type activities. So that's generally how the request is done and acted out.
All right. Well, that sounds good. So do you believe that's an improvement then? And you've heard the complaints of these principals?
It is an improvement, and a lot of this is, I guess, from years past. I'm sorry, but maybe it's because they generally don't have funds. And so I was looking at, so what I did was I took 2 former IQBs, merged it, ran duplicates to make sure there's no duplicates, send it out to the supervisors. I said, load it up with what we got. We're using federal funds to do this. They want 10 of something. We go through 10 in a day. Why? So the mindset, right? It's in the past, they haven't had the luxury of money to buy more than 10.
I see.
So currently, they're still in that mindset. So again, so it's a combination of stuff, but we're doing stuff to improve the process.
Okay. I was looking at this report from GPA. It was a point paper, maintenance of GDOE facilities. And they suggest in here that the way that the leased schools are maintained is really the most expensive, one of the most expensive ways to do it. And if we did all the schools like that, it's at $100 per student, but I think there's another point in here where they say $4,171 per student. But they also put in here, and this is what I'm interested in, and they say they agree that GDOE needs about $10 million annually to just maintenance for the 34 schools. This is just maintenance, not to fix them up or anything. That's $10 million annually. They say in the state of disrepair that the initial cost would be more like $20 million. So I'm not sure for how long that would be necessary, but yeah, I'm just thinking you might be underestimating when you say $5 million, if based on their estimates. But that was just my observation, but that's not really a question, just an observation. Yeah. So.
And if I can just clarify, so in the assessment or the position point paper that they're saying it's 10 million annually. Is that the number?
Yeah.
And again, they're taking the same position. I think our number was a little bit understated, and we can work with our team to improve those numbers. But again, they're recognizing the need for an annual appropriation.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's 10 million.
Yes. And again, right, that's, supposed to be part of everybody's budget. They propose a whole other way to do facilities, like we separate facilities out of education, right? And we do maintenance, repair, building of new facilities as a whole other entity is what they suggest, but that, I'm sure that's for another bill. But
Thank you, Speaker.
for now, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
sorry, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Si Diyos Masi, Speaker Terlaje. We're going to go back to Senator Parkinson. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question in terms of other projects or uncovered projects. You had spoke briefly about, sometimes the projects are a moving target and you don't quite know what you got in front of you. So do you kind of have a ballpark estimate for what these other projects are going to be costing? Because they're not included in your ARP estimates, are they?
As I indicated, I believe Senator Perez asked that. So we have ideas of what needs to be done, but we don't have a complete understanding of to what extent and cost, right? Sewer lines, they're all hidden. I can say pretty safely that Jose Rios' entire sewer line has to be gutted and redone. Do we have the luxury of money to do all of that for all the 35 schools? I don't think so. But we can work on that. And so I've got a list of schools based on age. We'll definitely focus on the older schools and move down the line. Older schools plus schools that have recurring issues with like sewer line or in-wall water supply line leaks or electrical drops. Okay, so the focuses will be along those lines. And our buildings are so old that in some cases, we can't find breakers for the panels that are there, not on Guam at least.
Is this true? Is this true with Jose Rios as well?
Jose Rios, in this case, I'm at this point taking care of sewer. I've had some inline water supply line leaks, so I'm guessing that's like next on the list for them.
I actually attended Jose Rios, and I remember the school blew away and was rebuilt. When the school was rebuilt, did they use the old sewer facilities, or did they build new ones?
Well, when schools, typically you don't touch anything that's underground because it's protected. It doesn't get blown away.
So
you tie in
so the sewers would be older than the 20 years
yes.
the school would be.
So the latest video I was looking at, it shows definite decline in what used to be 4-inch sewer line to maybe about 3 inches or slightly less. You'll have definite clogs when you have multiple flushes with something that, and not only that, there's ponding water in the line. That means something's happening where there's dips in the line, and with ponding water, it restricts the flow of water, of debris going downstream because it's catching it, it's keeping that flow from going forward. So those are issues that's happening there at Rios.
Okay, and is there a difference between a maintenance fund and a capital improvement fund? Are they one and the same, or are they completely separate things?
Yeah, well, they're all related to facilities. Capital improvement are your higher, mostly replacement, new type construction, whereas maintenance is to fix an immediate, So I would classify fixing a drain line that runs you 12 feet, but changing out an entire drain system for Rios would be capital improvement because of the magnitude.
Okay. I know that there's been a deadline for sanitation requirements set for not this fiscal year, but next fiscal year. If we did nothing, how many schools would be in danger of closure from not being up to code?
If we left it as is with the deadline being 24?
Correct.
I would hope that with the influx of money and the potential additional money, that we'd be able to address a lot of these, and we won't be, I can't give you an accurate number, but I would say most of the schools would be close to being up to par if we are able to move some of the higher priority issues that are at hand right now.
But let's just go doomsday scenario. I just kind of want to get an understanding of the current lay of the land. Say everything gets tied up in procurement, and we can't get anything done, how many of these schools would be forced to close at the end of fiscal year 2024?
Probably just about all of them.
Basically all of them.
Yeah.
So if we did nothing, all the schools would not be in compliance and would force a closure of all the schools. Are you aware that there's a bill trying to move up the dateline to within the 4 months? Would you be able to make your mandate in 4 months?
Definitely not.
Senator, I feel.
I just have a point of information. For
State
my-
your point of information.
My point of information is that in testimony from the Department of Public Health and Social Services on the public hearing for Bill 29, which I believe my colleague is referencing, Public Health said that if they were to conduct inspections of all the schools, that most, if not all, would fail those inspections, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. Continue, Senator
Do you
Parkinson.
anticipate the compliance of those schools changing within the next 4 months?
Senator, let me answer that question, because we're talking about two things here. Yes, public health is saying you're right. If they're going to go out and inspect all of our schools, potentially, yes, majority of our schools may not pass. The other that I'm concerned about when we say that we want to do this for the next school year, we're talking about school opening in August. And around that time, that's when the contractors will be in the schools. So that means then that there would be, supplies, equipment, debris, or what have you, that will be outside or even within the campus. And that definitely will become then an issue for public health and could potentially then close down the schools. It's not to say, though, that, we're looking at other alternatives to be able to address that just in case. But that was the only reason that I'm saying that we wanted that extension for not this immediate coming school year, but the next, I'm not saying 20 years, only because there will be a lot of construction work being done at our schools up until next year, so at least September 24.
Ma'am, I have a question. Is there any utility in school closures in terms of consolidating resources to better serve the schools that are in better condition, and then potentially working on those closed schools while we, entertain something like double session?
Yes, we are looking at many different options. One option, yes, would be to, close the school down, put the children on virtual, learning. The other is, yes, double session with other schools. The third option is portions of the school, like one wing will be closed down, and then the other wing, the students will be using. So there's definitely many different options that we're discussing with our principals.
Do you anticipate any school closures if you are forced to make your mandate in 4 months rather than 16 months?
Well, we're trying not to. Like I said, when Phil mentioned that we have these open purchase orders, what those are is to try to purchase all the supplies and materials that we need for the low-hanging fruit. We have an idea what those are when we look at all of the data of schools that have been closed down. Gotten demerits for what those are. So those are the things that we're purchasing and addressing. So, and just to let you know that spring break is coming up in April, and aside from having some 2 days for training, then that's where everybody else in the school campus also will be working to address all of those issues. Our safety person is working currently with individuals, staff within the schools to go over all of the requirements of public health and to be able to kind of do this self-help at their schools, and also during spring break. And at the same time, our maintenance people will be going out to help. The other thing that we're trying to do, again, everything's all in a rush, is that we're planning a job fair, because we figure that this would be the best opportunity to just let everybody know what are all the positions that we need, in particular for facilities and maintenance, so that then they can all come in. I mean, we advertise all the time, but people are just not coming. But if we did a job fair on the island sooner, not not until summer, but do it now, then we hope to reach out to a lot of people, hopefully to apply, and we can start to fill those positions in facilities and maintenance.
Okay, I just want to follow along that thread. How much maintenance staff do you guys have directly employed by GDOE versus private sector, public-private partnerships? Like, what is that split? Are we 50-50 in-house versus out-house? What's the makeup of your maintenance?
Well, currently we have about positions for 70 workers, and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have 25 individuals that are filled positions, and that we need 35 more. Phil, do you know?
Yeah, Dr. Wampat, we're at 27 currently.
27.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 27 in-house, and how much of your staff for maintenance would you say is out-house? If you got 27 in-house, how many would be in the out-house?
We don't have any outside.
Okay.
I think what the senator is trying to say is that when we do the public-private partnership, and what it is that then there will be this private company who will be managing the maintenance of our 35 schools, but then they will be able to use our employees, our facilities and maintenance employees, to be able then to address those concerns at the schools, and or be able to do some contracts to bring in somebody else to help out in the schools if we don't have the skilled laborers or the capability to handle some of those maintenance work.
Yeah, because the reason I ask is I know my colleague Senator San Augustine had brought up before how public partner private ships, they're real convenient because you just tell them what you need done and they go out and do all that stuff. But my problem with public-private partnerships is that when there is a problem with that public-private partner, it's very hard to get recourse for them. If a maintenance man is not doing his job, it is very easy to just fire that guy and hire somebody else. But we have no such recourse with public-private partnerships. So that's why I ask these questions about maintenance. Would it behoove the Department of Education to have much more of its human capital dedicated to maintenance as opposed to outsourcing that?
Yes, I remember at the time when I was in the school system, we actually had a strong number of maintenance workers, 300 workers, but it has dwindled down to 70 workers right now. And we did not need to go out at the time to contract any of the work. The guys basically did all the work for all the departments. All of the schools.
All righty, and I'm just trying to understand a little bit of because I'm hearing what you guys are saying, that you do need the money, but you would like both the money and the continuing appropriation. I guess my questioning to you guys is, if you only had to choose one, would you choose the lump sum or the continuing appropriation? If you couldn't do both, what would you guys much prefer?
Well, Senator Fisher basically gave a scenario where if the monies were given, 30 million at one time, to be able then to invest invest the money and use the returns to continue to maintain our schools, then that would be good. Well, we underestimated, I know, at 5 million, but if it was 10 million, then that's 30 million for three years.
Is GOD qualified to invest? No?
No.
What percentage of GDOE funding is involved in investment schemes?
That I don't have the answer for.
So we don't have, currently right now, I believe the only funds that we have that are available for investment is the trust funds, and that's a very different scenario. We don't have a financial management team to receive these appropriations and then act as a financial investor, nor do I think that that's the correct strategy moving forward. And then just to the earlier, just for the record, when Dr. Judy did comment on the current staff, we are actively trying to fill the maintenance staff at 70 positions, but we're about 27 currently in our staffing pattern.
All right. I have a question about your maintenance staff. Based on national averages, is the pay of the maintenance staff
Senator
competitive
Parkinson,
nationally?
if I may, sir, can we keep to the capital improvement project? We would stay away from, asking questions on salary at this point, so.
Well, no,
if we
because
can.
this is germane to that, because if they could attract people who can work in these positions, it would actually help the capital improvement
Okay,
projects.
I'll allow it, go ahead.
All right, yeah, so go ahead.
Well, we have an example where we tried to hire an engineer to help us, but no, there were no takers, and we were told it's because the salary was so low.
Okay.
And that's basically the same with all of our skilled laborers.
Would it be fair to characterize that GDOE does not have necessarily a funding problem, but they have a human capital problem, that you just can't get these people on board? Is that fair to say?
No, we still have funding problems, because if we are to let's say, do above step increase in the salary of these individuals, one, we have to make sure that we have the funding, and two, we need to go through and justify why and go before the board for approval to do this.
Are you allowed to use ARP funding to hire maintenance workers or to improve your human capital situation?
We have, like with mentors and coaches for the classrooms, but then that's only temporary. That is not something that's going to be permanent.
Would giving your maintenance and line workers a more permanent increase help you to maintain and keep your school staffed properly?
Absolutely. I think we'll maintain and keep all of our people.
All right, and so looking at this from the outside, it seems that GDOE has won 2 lotteries in its lifetime, because not only do we have an incredible amount of federal funds, we also have this legislature tripping all over themselves to give you as much money as they can. So I just have to ask again, in this once-in-a-lifetime lottery, do I have it correct that because of the federal funds, you're willing to take the proceeds of this great windfall from the legislature as a continued resolution rather than a lump sum? Am I understanding your position correctly? All right, and so just for the record, if you only had to choose once.
Yeah, go ahead, can you answer that? Did you answer? Yes, Dr. Wampat, yeah.
It just depends how this is going to happen. I mean, if you're going to say that you're going to get this $30 million and you delineate all the things that we can do with that 30 million, like we said earlier, was to be able to buy supplies, materials, equipment that, for keeping our schools, sanitary, or to pass public health inspections. The other would be beyond the capital improvement projects. Yes, but like Mr. Tovis said, we don't know how much those things are going to be, is going to cost us, or what's the extent of the damage, let's say, in the sewage pipes that will be leading from in the walls to outside, to the main lines. And then, so if that's the case, potentially we could expend all of the monies. We would, and if you write it where you're going to say you want to put it in a lockbox, so that then we can have that, we take a portion of that to keep in the lockbox for the year after, after we've done all the maintenance and repair of our facilities, then the money that, let's say the 10 million in the following year would be to continue to maintain the facilities with a public-private partnership.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wampat. And Senator Parkinson? your
Yes, my time is up, but
Thank
thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your questions, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Senator Parkinson. Senator Tom Fisher, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In Washington, D.C. right now, it is 2:40 in the morning. Dr. Wampat,
Yes.
I thank you for your service and hope you have a restful rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Senator Fisher. Senator Quinata, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Thank you again for your continued support in this endeavor. We're all trying to get GOE its funding needed and make sure that there's skilled laborers to proceed with the dreams of DOE. My question is, there's ESF funds and ARP funds of 183 quote-unquote million, right? How much of that is dedicated to CIP right now?
$102 million.
102
out of
million?
ARP, yes.
102.
Yes.
And what is going to happen to the rest of it?
So they're deviated between curriculum matters and health and safety. And then 102 out of ARP alone is CIP. And then $12 million for facilities and maintenance.
Okay. What happened to the washing machines and Tide Pods purchased during the pandemic?
Washing machines, those were not funded out of the emergency funds.
Oh, where were they funded from?
They're out of the consolidated grant.
Okay. How many vehicles were purchased in aid to expedite material deliveries?
Well, to my understanding, off the top of my head, there's 3 Highlanders, there's 2 Sienna vans that were given to public health.
Given to public health?
Yes, so it was used for the transportation of students, I believe.
Okay.
And then we have the box trucks and the state truck.
How many box trucks did you guys purchase?
One, right? One big one.
One big one, and I guess what is it, crate truck?
A crate truck?
What is the other truck you purchased?
State truck.
State truck.
Yes.
And I guess that's the one with like a picket fence around it?
Yes.
You only bought one of each.
One, yes, that's correct.
So if one of them goes down, you cannot deliver anything.
If one of them goes down, we cannot deliver anything. No, we have the other vans, and the Highlanders, and the transit vans as well, and the box truck.
Okay. Who is spearheading the CIP projects?
Mr. Philtovis.
Currently, myself and Bart Cruz, the lead engineer for GPA.
Okay. Are you in coordination with the AG's office on all the procurement?
We're in coordination with our procurement office, and they move it forward from that point, Senator.
Okay. So 102 million is already appropriated and RFB'd, I mean...
They've been requisitioned and moved forward in the process.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That is all.
Thank you, Senator Quinata. Our Oversight Chair, Senator Joseph Augustine. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, in the bill, it's talking about $30 million. Based on testimony of the acting superintendent, if you can get $5 million and keep it going, $5 million a year to take care of your maintenance, you'd be okay. I do have an amendment that I will be proffering after your excuse to give you $10 million today. Use $10 million, start up your public-private partnership, get all the materials you need, then you'll be on your feet. Because I honestly believe if you were to give him $30 million today, you're not going to be able to spend it. you're having problems spending even 10. So I'm not gonna, say that you're gonna have problems with 30. And then to make the excuse, well, why don't we find a way to use lockbox and putting it away and save it? There's other agencies that are asking for the same amount of money. If my amendment that I proffer after you leave passes, and you do the Title I to get your solar energy, in a year you'd have more than 10 million a year. No doubt. You'd probably be trying to figure out where to spend it. So I'm just concerned is that I have no problem supporting DOE. It's easy. It's easy. It's a no-brainer. But just give you money just to give you money. Times are great this year. It was great before. Failure. We're only talking about this bill, so I'm not going to get into your budget. I'm not going to discuss the problems you have. I know, Frank, you'd probably be in shock, and I know the acting superintendent probably be like, come on, Joe. And I have no problem. I'll save that for another day. But I just be mindful, the spending habits of DOE has been questionable. And you as the auditor, Frank, financial superintendent, you know where I'm coming from. And I'm just concerned that we be very careful how you get more money when you need to spend what you got. And locking it up in a lockbox only denies other agencies funding. Times are great today. Times were great yesterday. During the pandemic, that was the opportune time when you first got the ARP, when fixing repairs should have happened. Because why? There was nobody in the classrooms. You don't need to say, we need the students here to find out where the toilets are broken. Inspect. It's broken, replace it. You don't need the students to be around to see the drop ceiling falling. Look around, you see it's falling. There should have been major projects going on because the classrooms were all closed. You were all just issuing out food, handing out food. The contractors could have been there. Things could have gotten fixed. You guys had the opportune time. Unfortunately, that wasn't the direction. It was everything else you need to do. And sure, DOE's always got their hands full. Thank you, Phil, for being there, and may God bless you when you find problems. But you know what? On many times when they talk about the budget, they say, what's that, the 14 points? I used to say that GPay is a reliable source of power. The problem we got in DOE is we don't have the proper distribution of power. Nothing new. And it never got fixed, never got changed. Why? Because money wasn't there. But when money was available, did it get changed? No. Now money's there. Is it being changed? Probably not. You know, one of my colleagues asked the question, Phil, what percentage of ARP money has been used to pay for deferred maintenance that the Army Corps of Engineers put up? Could you tell me what percentage? Not dollar, percentage. $20%, 10%, 50%?
You said not completed.
No. How much money was put on deferred? Remember, the Army Corps came out with $100 million.
Yeah.
How much was maybe complete or not, but was deferred? Of your ARP money?
Yeah.
How much? The percentage. Don't give me dollars, give me percentage. So it's not hard.
Yeah.
10%, 20%?
Senator, I'd say about 20%.
20%.
Yeah.
Shame, shame, shame. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Sujus Masni, Senator San Agustin, Senator San Nicolas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey guys, thanks for showing up again today, and keep up the good work. Thank you for your service to our community, and let's get out there. You know, fixing the school is going to take a long time. It's not going to happen overnight. It kind of reminds me of when I was deployed and my pari got on the treadmill so he can meet the weight requirements the next day. It just doesn't happen that way. It's going to take time. You need the money, I'll be here for you if you want to ask for 5 million or 30 million next year, you know, because we know that this is not going to, this probably is not even going to, you know, scratch the surface of all our problems. And, you know, it's going to take time. It's going to take more. And I just want to inject some, you know, sort of sanity and cooler heads here prevail. That it's going to take a lot more, it's going to take a longer time to get these things done. I worked in DOE, and I recognize the problem. It's not going to be done overnight. However, we do recognize, you know, the problems that DOE faces. And I just hope that we can get to them as quickly as we could, but I know it's going to take time. And thank you for taking the time out to come down and visit us and with your testimony. And I do have a lot of faith in Superintendent Judy, and we really haven't given her, you know, enough time to produce something of, you know, so I want you to know that I'm pretty much behind you guys, and I'll be here for a couple more months, and I'm here to support you when you do come back for whatever it is that you need. It's important that our kids know that we're here for them, and I just want to thank you again. So have a good day. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Senator San Nicolas, and thank you. Colleagues, we have completed our second round. We'll prepare for our third round, which will incorporate any amendments. Please have them on the Google Drive, and I will require that if I come to you and it's not on Google Drive, then you snooze, you lose. So please have your amendments prepared. We'd also like to thank the panel and excusing them for being here all day today. Also, Speaker or Dr. Judy Wampat, Acting Superintendent, Adongalusi Masu. We know it's really late over there, but it shows your commitment to this island and especially to the students. So Celine, right, and Mr. Tovis, Mr. Frank Cooper Nurse, AKA Mr. Smith, and Vanessa, Adongalusi Masi. We're going to take just a short recess, and we'll be right back. Committee of the Whole is back in order. We're on this third round, colleagues, so amendments have been proffered and brought through. I think some colleagues are having a difficult time making sure that the clerk has it in their email, but hard copies have been made. So I'm going to go based on the amendments that I was given to start with. And we're going to start with Senator Chris Dueñas, who is also the author of the legislation. So we'll give him the courtesy to begin first. Senator Dueñas, you are recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Chair, and just for the reference of those following along, and of course this amendment is passed out. I believe everyone has one. I'm just going to go ahead and read the numeration on the top of the page. This is B32 CMD L14-17 P1 COTW. And Madam Chair, this amendment is proffered for basically one reason, and that is that as we have made it a practice, and I believe the correct practice, in the last legislature, when we finally started appropriating monies for different purposes, such as LEAP 1 in the last fiscal year, and we kept seeing these one-line appropriations coming down, that really the proper way to do it is as a supplemental budget amendment, and that means to visit the budget. And so other amendments have mimicked this within the drive here. Of course, I'm just talking about mine. But to just make sure that it's really understood, the purpose of this amendment is it goes in and it raises revenues. So that when the CRER is calculated, should this bill pass favorably and be signed into law, or come into law for however reason, whatever method, it would be accurate and true and correct that when the CRER comes out after this appropriation is made, it would show that those revenues are no longer available. Because, Madam Chair, what we're doing is we're basing ourselves on the general fund, fiscal year 2023, that we're currently appropriating within the current year. It is absolutely imperative and appropriate that we do it this way. In fact, even the governor, on recent legislation that she sent down, made it very clear during her presentation to us that she has sent down her bill in this format as well. So this is the proper way to do it. We know that traditionally, Madam Speaker or Madam Chair, that it has been accepted as a one-line appropriation in the past, but probably that's why we have gotten in trouble before, was because we didn't go in and adjust revenues, and we didn't do it based on solid information presented that adjusted the budget to that amount. So this is the $30 million appropriation. As you know, Madam Chair, this will affect other categories, rainy day fund and also the pharmaceuticals. It's just a matter of the formula. And so that's why, you'll see some numbers that do kind of creep up in terms of the 30 million overall, but this is the way the Budget Act is prepared in terms of its formula basis. And Madam Chair, I would just direct us then to the end of the amendment, which clearly makes it for the Department of Education, and that would be Section 23 that amends Section 4, actually Section 23 on the last page. Basically, that amendment then says appropriation for repairs and maintenance. It lines through Department of Education because this is where the actual meat of the original bill is. And the sum of $30 million is appropriated from the general fund to the Guam Department of Education for the purposes of repairs and maintenance of schools and of school infrastructure. And I know there's probably some amendments based on the testimony brought forward from Department of Education, but Madam Chair, that is a description of the amendment. It simply takes the one-line appropriation, straight appropriation from the bill as introduced, and does it properly in the format of the budget, and basically makes it a supplemental budget appropriation in accordance with the general fund as we've identified clearly now, as the latest CRER says, we're tracking $43 million in revenue, or $45 million in revenues above adopted revenue levels. So that is a brief description of the amendment, Madam Chair, and I hope to get the support of our colleague, Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi, Senator Dueñas. Would anyone like to speak on the Senator Dueñas amendment? Okay, Senator Parkinson, you are recognized, sir.
Yeah, I just want to, speak for the record and be very, very clear here that if we tie up this money, this will not allow the schools to address funding concerns for their maintenance personnel through the GPP play plan. And so for that reason, I cannot support this amendment because this bill would kill the pay raises for the janitors and the bus drivers and the maintenance workers. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. Would anyone else? Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, the whole purpose of this bill to begin with is to address the fiscal maintenance of our school system. It was just last Friday we sat through, and I know you guys were there a little earlier than us. We were up at the tour at Anderson. But for those of you that were there since 2 o'clock, I think we didn't leave here till after 7, almost 8 o'clock Friday evening, listening to the concerns and issues by both students that came, as well as their parents, members of parent-teacher organizations, once again bringing to light the issues of concerns and physical deficiencies in our school system. I think we all agree those conditions are unacceptable. And at some point, it's got to stop. We have an expectation for a better, safer environment for our children. That's what we've been here to address over the last couple of days. That's what we are prioritizing. That's what the issues that parents themselves who took the time to come down here to relay to us as policymakers what their key concerns were with regards to the continued lack of proper maintenance of our school facilities. Now, if we're really here to talk about the children, then let's prioritize the children and stop politicizing this process by throwing money out there and making that the reason why that's more important than taking care of the children. I think that's why we prioritize these bills to come into session this week to address those very concerns. And I think trying to throw something else at this to distract from the real issues facing our school system, I don't think we should be distracted by that. I think we should prioritize what it is that our community, and more directly our parents, and including the students that have come down to us to talk to us across the table, to relay their frustrations and concerns, and they have every right to do so because the system has failed them. And here we are today. We've been here since yesterday, primarily focused on how are we going to address the fiscal infrastructure of our schools. And that, to me, Madam Chair, is a priority. And so I support this proposed amendment by Senator Dueñas. I think we need to stay focused on what really matters and stop playing the politics around here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sijus Masi, Senator Brown, thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the Senator Dueñas amendment? Senator Chris Barnett, you are recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry, I'm new to this, and I'm not sure I completely understand what this amendment is proposing. I'm just being honest here. But it kind of seems like it's a technical amendment, so if the author would yield in maybe layman's terms, por favor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Dueñas, do you yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Chair, and because of the nature of fiscal appropriations, and I mean, we're kind of talking like accountants, so I'm going to do it in the most layman English that I can. Madam Chair, as you know, you've been through many budgets, and many of us have here, but I completely understand the question from my good colleague, Senator Barnett. The Budget Act, the budget as we enter into discussions every year on the budget proposals, what ends up happening is just about everything, of course everything is derived from adopted revenues. When the revenues are adopted, then we go into expenditures, and expenditures are adopted as well. Whenever you adjust revenues, you are going to, on a formula basis, adjust other areas. So just let's take the pharmaceutical fund as one of the examples, because there are others that are affected. But if we go in and we look at the pharmaceutical fund and the fact that for GMH, this ends up being somewhat of a minor windfall to other areas because of the formula nature of how we do our budgeting. So if we go in there and we just do the GMH pharmaceuticals, you will see that the $18,709,991 goes to $20,325,16, And that's because we've adjusted the revenues, and we have to adjust the revenues for the 30 million and include those other areas which will have a corresponding increase. That is Budget 101 in terms of the formula base. In fact, you'll see another amendment that is also in the drive and is put on our table that does the same exact thing. The only difference is it's a different amount. So the mover of that amendment, I know it's kind of technical to jump over, but I think it's appropriate in this time. You will see also, and then once again, the reason why I referred to the governor's presentation in the State of the Territory address, stating that she had done it in the Budget Act, revisited the 2023 Budget Act. It will always have a formula-based calculation whereby whatever revenues you change, there will be a corresponding change in certain areas of the Budget Act. So it simply takes a one-line appropriation where $30 million is hereby appropriated, and it does it by doing it as a budgetary measure, which is the right way to do it. In the past, when we haven't done it this way, one example is the CRER now, if we just did it like that, would not necessarily, or would reflect maybe as an anomaly with an asterisk on the bottom of their report stating that $30 million was appropriated. This actually will show an actual real-time adjustment of revenues in the CRER because we have now changed the budget. And that's why this is the proper way to introduce legislation which does appropriation, because it does it in the Budget Act. I hope that will suffice, Madam Chair.
Senator Barnett, does that answer your question, sir?
Ma'am, so is it basically almost like a formatting procedure?
Yes, it's a
Because
formatting.
I know the bill is introduced was very simply, it was a paragraph, and now I see there's a lot more lines and.
Right. And basically, Senator Barnett, if I may, it's increasing the revenues. So what we're doing is we anticipated that we're going to have X amount of money for the year for FY23. But now we're utilizing that. We're actually foreseeing that we have additional funding. So we just increase the revenue and be able to use that revenue in this bill to be able to appropriate the $30 million.
Thank you, ma'am. I like your explanation better. Thank you.
You're welcome, Senator Barnett. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the bill? I believe it's Senator San Agustin. You're recognized, sir.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to make sure we all understand correctly. Our colleague did explain the adjustment in the pharmaceutical and the rainy day fund. In actuality, the 30 million is actually 32,236,000 and $270,000. Because 30 million will go to DOE, 1.624025 will go to pharmaceutical, and 612,245 will go to the rain day fund. I just want to make sure we're all we do understand that. And if you just minus 236, 270 from the what is surplus, that is what we're left with, which is less than $14 million. Thank you.
Senator San Agustin, for the sake of the author of the amendment, can you explain that once again, please? He was in the middle of conversation about the funding, because we want to ensure that the 30 million is there, in the legislation, that it's going to be appropriated to the schools. However, the amendment, what you're stating is, and as the chairman of OFB, that these numbers are correct, that the end result does accumulate to 30 million. Is that what you were saying earlier?
No.
Okay, so can you please explain again?
Okay. If you look at the amendment, it identified on the very last page 30 million to DOE. Before you get to the 30 million, you've got to add the 1.624025 to pharmaceutical and 612,245 into the rainy day fund. So this amendment basically impacts 32.236,270 from what is on the surplus or identified as surplus money of 45 million. So when you minus from the two, you'll find that the total amount would be, And I'll tell you in a few seconds. You'd have remaining left in the surplus of 12,802,316. Just want to make sure we all understand what we're doing here.
Thank you so much, Senator Sinagasi. I greatly appreciate that. Senator Dueñas, did you wanted to, you know, what we're going to do is we're going to take a short recess, like a 1-minute recess, just to verify the numbers are correct before we move forward, okay? Committee on Rules is, Committee on the Whole is back in order. Thank you, Senator Sinagasi, for repeating that information to the body.
Madam
so
Chair, I
clear.
was recognized, so I do want to answer that. And I want to take a point of personal privilege right now because this is extremely important at this time.
State your point of personal
When
privilege.
we were in recess, I made a clear warning to this body, and I want to put this on the record right now. First of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for confirming and making sure that everybody knew the numbers and what the impact will be because of the fact that the 30 million, and he is correct. That formula has ensured that the numbers are correct and there was 12 whatever odd million is left after this appropriation. Madam Chair, I take a point of personal privilege right now. I have warned every member of this body because an official document has gone out in official format of this legislature of an amendment that has not been proffered. Has not been proffered. And I say that again, Madam Chair, has not been proffered. This evildoer, whoever put this information out there to try to gaslight and get people up in arms and angry and lie to the people of Guam, put out this amendment. This amendment says Bill number 3237, Senator proposing amendment. Of course, it would be myself, CMD, Christopher M. Dueñas. And it says to add a new section to Bill 3237 COR to read, Section 3, reprogramming of funds. All funds under the educator pay plan as authorized by Public Law 36107 that were allotted for pay increases to teachers and administrators shall be reprogrammed for the maintenance and repair of school facilities and infrastructure. Madam Chair, this is a lie. This is a straight up lie. This amendment has never been proffered, and I want every news media to report there's a damn liar either in this body or an evildoer outside of this body. And if I find out and I get information that anybody in this august body, this distinguished 37th Guam Legislature, put this garbage out, they will be facing an ethics complaint post haste. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ma'am, point of information.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas, and point of information, Senator Barnett, please.
Thank you, ma'am. I have received this amendment numerous times on my WhatsApp, and I've also seen that it was tweeted by the Progressive Democrats of Guam. And I just want to state for the record that I was also attacked by this group, which is headed, I believe, by a staffer at Adelup. And I didn't appreciate being attacked. I was called out for being quote-unquote hypocritical. They said I didn't support the pay raises, which clearly I said I do. And this is par for the course, ma'am. And you know, while I don't know what to say. I'm disappointed, Senator, and I'm sitting in this body. I've got about a dozen amendments on my desk. I don't see this amendment. It doesn't exist. But to me, this just goes to show that this administration is willing to, at all costs, push this agenda for whatever reason. And when they should really just back off, because we're clearly going to address this issue of the pay raises. And I don't appreciate this fabricated pressure and these fabricated attacks, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Chris Barnett. Appreciate the comments that were made, and I hope that anybody who's watching this legislature right now can actually tell the truth to what's really happening here, that we're trying to help the people of Guam and our school children to be able to go to school in a safe environment, and that's all what we're doing here. Anybody else would like to speak on the Senator Dueñas amendment? Okay. No other speakers on the amendment? Okay. So, any objection to the amendment? There has been an objection to the amendment. All those in favor of the Chris Dueñas amendment, please raise your hand. Joanne. Yeah, there was an objection. There was an objection by Senator Joe San Augustine, and we are, okay. Amendment passes. Okay, next on the agenda, we are, Senator Dueñas, are you done with your amendment? Is there any more amendments that you have, sir?
Madam Chair, I do not. I waive closing. I close by chastising evildoers like Julian Jensen down at Progressive Democrats of Guam, who works in the governor's office at Bureau of Statistics and Plans.
Okay.
You better hope that's not on your computer, buddy.
Yeah, and I apologize, Senator Dueñas, that I didn't give you a chance to close, but that was a very dramatic, that took me back, Boom, that really took me back. But, I definitely sympathize with you. Okay, so we're going to move on. Senator, the next one that I received is the Speaker Terlaje's amendment that is in front of me. So I'm going to allow Speaker Terlaje for your amendment. Oh, no. I apologize. Actually, it was Senator Joe San Augustine who's next for his amendment. Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My colleagues, the amendment is written in the same format as Senator Dueñas brought up in his previous amendment that passed, but it's to amend that 30 million to 10 million. And the impact to that 10 million, it would generate, pharmaceutical would be 277, 404,000. The 2% rainy day fund would be 204,000. Total of an additional 481, 486. The total amount from the surplus would equate to, if you would give me just a second here, I would be able to give you that information. I was going to give you the number.
Out from where we are reading these numbers? Could we get
Sure,
a
yes, I apologize. Senator Fisher and colleagues, the amendment that we are addressing right now currently is Senator San Augustine's amendment and is on the top left side, and the number is B32 JSSA L14-17 P1COTW. And this is the Senator San Augustine amendment. And it's on line 14 and 17 of page 1, sir.
And if our colleagues need to know, if we just follow the amendment that's attached to it, wherever you see a strikeout, that's the numbers that are changing. The issues of concern really would be the pharmaceutical and 2%, no different than the previous amendment. It's just that the amounts are different. It's 20 million less. Okay, that's the only difference, and that one I'm going to make clear, that the total amount of this amendment versus the last one would be 10,486,000. If you go to the pharmaceutical list, you'll find that it increases by 277,404. So if any of my colleagues wants to know where it's at, it's on the last page, on the very top where it tells you the pharmaceutical. And if you want to find the rainy day fund, it is found on, just look for it. It's not that hard to find it. It's not 20 pages. And at the end result, the total taken from the surplus would be 10,481,000, which would leave 34,557,000 and 100,000. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Senator San Augustine. So on the Senator San Augustine amendment, would there be anyone like to talk? Okay, Senator Quistorainis, you are recognized.
Yes, Madam Chair. You know, I appreciate the efforts of the good mover of the proposal. However, Madam Chair, I think in light of the fact that we've already passed the amendment on the 30 million, of course we can consider every amendment that's been proffered, but as this is an amount that's significantly lower than what this body intended to appropriate, Madam Chair, I'm going to have to respectfully, very respectfully, object to this amendment. It's, I'm sure, well-intentioned to get much-needed resources to the Department of Education. However, I think it falls short of what our efforts are for this session. So I object to the amendment, Madam Chair.
Point of information, ma'am.
Just a minute. There's been an objection by Senator Dueñas. Thank you, sir. Senator Chris Barnett, point of information,
I don't know
please.
if it's point of information or a point of inquiry, but again, I'm not really sure I understand, but is there an attempt going on now to shortchange the Guam Department of Education from 30 million down to 10 million, or is this just an accounting thing?
Okay, Senator Barnett, so I'm yielding your time to speak right now, and it's more of a question to the author of the legislation, so can
I'm sorry, yes, I just, again, if I could, just a point of inquiry.
Sure.
Is this an attempt to shortchange the Guam Department of Education from 30 million down to 10 million, or is this merely some accounting semantics? Thank you.
Senator San Augustine, do you yield to the question?
Yes, I do.
Okay, sir, please.
Let's all be reminded that on the testimony and the written statement by the acting superintendent, she identified on the back page 5 million to support the public and private partnership to manage the maintenance of our facilities. I just increased that by 10 to give them, and it allowed them, and I mentioned it during the testimony and questions, is to jumpstart their public-private partnership so they can start doing what they need to do, which is actually to do the quick fixes that they need to do while they're doing the other projects that are funded by the federal grant. It's not a...
Yeah, Senator San Augustine, I believe the question was, is it attempting to take the 30 million and lessening it down to 10 million?
That's correct, and that's the simple answer. I think I answered that very quick, easily. 30
Senator Barnett,
and it's down to 10.
Yeah. Are you satisfied with that response?
I'm sorry, ma'am, just to clarify, is the mover of this amendment saying that he's adding an additional $10 million on top of the 30, or again, is this an attempt to shortchange the Guam Department of Education from the 30 million down to the 10 million? In just the simplest terms, ma'am. Thank you.
No,
Senator San Augustine,
I think I answered that question.
I
Number
believe
one,
you did, yeah.
30 million is what was first proffered. There's no shortchange. It's making sure that the Department of Education had sufficient funding to continue on. And the 5 million or the 10 million would help them continue on. That's all it is. There's no shortchange here.
Okay,
Thank you.
so Senator Barnett, as Senator San Augustine mentioned, it is taking it's only allowing 10 million instead of 30.
Ma'am, I'm just still a little confused. So the mover of the amendment is saying this is not shortchanging the Guam Department of Education, but is it true or not that we're discussing 30 million and this is a departure from that down to 10 million? I'm sorry, ma'am, again.
No,
I'm just-
Senator Barnett, I believe the author of this amendment explained that he is just allowing 10 million instead of 30 million on his amendment. That's what his amendment does.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're very
So it
welcome.
is a shortchanging, in other words, because we're departing from the 30 million that we intended to give the Guam Department of Education. And so this amendment is basically saying no 30 million, just 10 million. In English, yes? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Okay, anyone else would like to speak on the amendment, the Joe San Augustine amendment?
Call for the vote.
No other speakers? Nothing? Okay, so there has been an objection to the amendment. So all those who are in favor of the Joe San Augustine amendment, please raise your hand. Amendment fails. Now we're moving on to the next amendments. Okay, we are now on the Speaker Terlaje amendment. And this is, I'll allow you, Speaker Terlaje, to recognize the number on the far left corner for those who are trying to look for it. So she has
Thank you.
several amendments here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got 2 amendments. The first one, is to lines 14 to 17, page 1. The number on the top left corner is B32 TMT L14 P1 COTW.
Okay.
So amends lines 14 to 17 of page 1 of the bill. And this is in the bill, sections 4 and 5. So as amended by Senator Dueñas, the bill now in section 4 reads 30 million, the bill now in section 4 has a section 23 that includes the amount of the 30 million. I am proposing in this section to reduce it to 20 million from the general fund, and this would come from FY23 general fund revenue. And then in section 5, to add a new section 5, which would take the 10 million from the general fund from fiscal year 2024 revenues. All of these for the same purposes. The purpose of this, okay, so in the title under section 5, there's a section 24. That should read fiscal year 2024, so I would ask that legal counsel be able to make that amendment. Just in the title. That's a technical amendment. And of course, to put the closed parentheses after 10 million. Otherwise, so what it does, it takes the 30 million and it divides it up into 20 from one general fund source. That is the excess revenues from FY23, and it takes 10 from the fiscal year 2024 general fund revenues. This would still keep 30 million going to the Department of Education. It would ensure that the Department of Education is able to meet what it needs to do prior to the opening of these schools in the fall, because this brings them, because the fiscal year ends in September, and so this would allow them to use funds, you know, September, October, when the schools are opening as well. It matches the minimum, really the minimum amount that was calculated by GPA just for maintenance. But as we've heard today, there are still a list of projects that are required for the Department of Education to fix these schools, to repair these schools before they can actually just continue on with maintenance. So it gives them the money, they're able to use it for the repair and the maintenance, and to meet all of the I'm not sure even if this will meet all of the projects, but it will get them closer to meeting all of the projects necessary for all of the schools. And so that would be my amendment. And really, the gist of it is because it reduces the impact to the FY23 general fund revenues while those are still in flux. But it gives them the ability to use FY24 revenues right now so that they can plan these projects and have them ready to go and be ready actually to get these schools open on time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Anyone would like to speak on the amendment? Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
I'm just trying to understand, Madam Chair, and maybe the author would yield to this. She identified, and I know she's going to change the section 24 there to reflect 2024, but the appropriation for repairs, maintenance from the sum of 20 million is appropriate from the current general fund. And you can correct me if I'm right, okay? And then the next one is to say, we're going to give you 10 million from the next budget year. Am I correct?
Yes. Speaker Terlaje, would you like to respond?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And I got this from how we do appropriations for textbooks and instructional materials. Example, Section 7 of the GDOE budget. It appropriates like this from FY 2024 revenues for fiscal year 2023 to DOE for the purchase or development and production of textbooks and instructional materials. So I thought that this would be an appropriate way to do that.
Then with that, Madam Chair, that we do a quick recess so we can correct the formula that I know my colleague Senator Dueñas, me and him are working on the same sheet. We got to put it in the right order so we can identify the 30 then that was passed becomes 20. And then we identify what is the true cost so that everybody understands it, because the other 10 million, that we can work with when we go into the next budget. That's the easy one. It's the first 20 we need to be able to address and call out what does that 20 equal to for pharmaceutical and rainy day fund. So we just get this thing correct, and if we can have a quick recess, I'll get my OFB folks to start working the numbers and produce something so we don't drag this any further, okay?
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute, and I'm timing it, 5-minute recess, okay? Committee on Rules, Committee on the Whole is back in order. Senator Sinagostine, I don't see he's in here, but he's still working the numbers on the last amendment, if I'm not mistaken. So Speaker Terlaje, you're recognized.
Yes, if I could be allowed, I'd like to, while he's still working those numbers, move on to my next amendment.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and set this amendment aside that we've been working on, the first amendment of Speaker Terlaje. So now we are going to the second amendment of Speaker Terlaje. Please, you're recognized, ma'am, and please recognize the corner end.
Thank you. Okay, so this amendment, the number on the left-hand corner is B32 TMT L14 to 17 PICOTW. Oh no, P1 COTW. Okay, so it's amendment to lines 14 to 17 on page 1. Again, it's the same section of the bill where the $30 million appropriation is, and I'm not touching that in this amendment. This amendment touches the uses of the money. So where it currently says it's appropriated to GDOE for the purpose of repairs and maintenance of what does it say? Of school infrastructure. It currently says for repairs and maintenance of school infrastructure. I'm adding and grounds to meet safety, sanitation, and education requirements, including but not limited to the purchase of equipment, materials, and supplies, and the hiring of skilled workers. This is just to make sure they could use it for these purposes, and as we had our discussion earlier with GDOE. I hope that's self-explanatory.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Anybody would like to speak on this amendment, the Therese Terlaje amendment? Anyone? Okay, Senator Dueñas, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, I rise in support of the amendment. I think that this is a practical approach. You know, as we discussed, Madam Chair, that the idea when we were able to ascertain what DOE has been coming to the legislature for and asking during the roundtables in the last several weeks, you know, they were asking for assistance in terms of their budget, but they were also asking for a dedicated funding source. Madam Chair, this starts the ball because we pass this into law. The $20 million will come from this fiscal year. It will still be a really big help in terms of backstopping their ARP and ensuring that even with some of the contracts and the like are having difficult time going under ARP, you know, they have this backstop, because once they get this appropriation, Madam Chair, it's in their budget. And so the bottom line is that they have that to assist them. But then we now speak within this year with this appropriation saying, we heard you and we will start the ball rolling, giving you that dedicated funding source in the next fiscal year. I appreciate, you know, the move by the good speaker. And I think that it genuinely preserves the intent of the $30 million to go to GDOE, but it certainly recognizes that we've been able to do both now. We've been able to really shore them up in terms of this fiscal year because of their representation of their efforts to get additional ARP, although it did fall slightly short. And then it also says and speaks of this legislature's hearing their cry to say, let's once and for all. As a matter of fact, Madam Chair, it actually represents what GPA mentioned, that the good speaker was, you know, when in the questioning to Mr. Cooper Nurse and the DOE staff, that's exactly what's in the report for GPA as they did that surveillance and that opportunity to, you know, give them a view of what it would take just for maintenance, Madam Chair, just for maintenance, right? But man, that's a big start. And that's a great representation from this legislature. So I want to say that I appreciate the efforts of the good speaker, and I support the amendment, Madam Chair.
Thank you to Senator Chris Dueñas and Senator Chris Malafunction Barnett. You are recognized on the amendment.
Point of information, Madam Chair, if I could just make sure everybody's on the same page. We're on my second amendment. We put the first one on hold, so we're on the one paragraph amendment that adds to the bottom of section 23 the words "and grounds to meet safety, sanitation, and education requirements, including but not limited to the purchase of equipment, materials, and supplies, and the hiring of skilled workers."
Thank you for that information, Madam Speaker. Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Yes, ma'am. I also rise in support of this amendment. I think it provides more detail as to how and what the Guam Department of Education can spend this money on, and I would just commend the good author for the heads-up thinking, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Anyone else? Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in full support of this amendment. I really like the fact that she tied it to sanitation, safety, education requirements, particularly with the testimony by the acting superintendent here tonight, that we want to make sure that, it's aligned with the regulations. Also, I think it's, in one of the hearings, Dr. Mary Cotta mentioned that potentially they can train some of the students to do some of the maintenance work. So I really appreciate expanding the use of the funds for those, so that those that are using the facilities can also be a part of the solution. The other thing I really like about this amendment is the hiring of skilled workers. We all think that it has to do with facility staff, but I think it also can go towards procurement staff. DOE has a shortage of procurement personnel at the moment, and I think if we can hire the qualified personnel to move these capital improvement projects along, I think that would be very critical, in addition to hiring maintenance workers. So I thank the good author for this amendment. Sejus Masi.
Sejus Masi, Senator Perez, for those excellent comments. Anyone else would like to speak on the amendment? If there's nobody else, I think we'll, are there any objections? Or wait, let me allow the author of the amendment to close, please.
I'd like to close because I'm hoping that, I just want to point out that we were told that the ARP funds cover certain capital improvement projects, certain projects, but not all projects. So there are other things such as gyms, playgrounds, sport fields, walkway coverings, exterior sewage piping, fencing, and other things that are not included in the categories that they're currently setting aside for ARP, such as roofing, walls, plumbing, doors, restrooms, electrical, things like that. So hopefully this will cover those other repairs. The other thing is, and extend it to the grounds so that, like we talked about the flooding on the grounds of GW, that this would help them to take care of that, and not just the buildings, because the children literally are in flood zones. So hopefully all of those things, and so I thank my colleagues for the support on this amendment, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Terlaje. We're going to take a vote. Anyone object to the amendment?
Madam Chair, could I also add to allow legal to make this as a technical amendment if my other amendment passes to the second section?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for remembering on that. And with technical corrections being made to the amendment, is there any objection to the amendment? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. We're moving on now to the next amendment, I believe is from Senator Parkinson. Senator Parkinson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment I am proffering to Bill number 32-37 is the amendment to line 4, page 2, to add a new section 4 to Bill number 32-37 COR to read, Section 4 date, all appropriations from the general funds under this act must be expended by the end of fiscal year 2023. Failure to meet this deadline will result in the funds being automatically transferred back into the general fund.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak on your amendment or just?
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate the urgency with which this body is moving. And so the intent of this amendment is, I sat at the same round table some of you folks had, and there was talk about how during an emergency situation, we, the legislature, I believe, had budgeted several $1 million to, I believe it was either public health or the Department of Education for foodstuffs to get food to the people during the emergency. And one of the things that really disturbed me about that was this emergency money that we allocated to them, they weren't able to spend in like 2 years. And I would not want this kind of money to be sitting on the vine unspent, and it's especially unforgivable to spend any local funds when we have more than $100 million in unspent ARP funds. So I am absolutely in support of making sure DOE has more money, but at the same time, I would like to use a similar mechanism as what Senator Barnett is doing, where we give them a deadline so we could get some giddy up in their step. So I implore my colleagues to please support me on this. I support this increase to DOE, but I also want to make sure that we have some accountability and giddy up. And in the event that they fail to meet their deadline and this money is returned to the general fund, I myself am committed to using that money going back to the general fund as a funding source for a continued appropriation that DOE themselves requested. So even if the money does go back, we are in very good position to make sure that they have it as a more permanent funding source rather than just as a one-time lump sum payment. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. On the Senator Parkinson amendment, would anybody like to speak on the amendment? Senators Dueñas, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, and I appreciate the efforts of the mover of this amendment. However, as you know, Madam Chair, in this body, many times, particularly for critical areas, we do continuing appropriations. And I think that this money is critical. You know, if you look at the ARP funds, because I think there's going to be another amendment which I think would actually counter this amendment. You know, if you look at the ARP funds, they have until 2024 September to be expended. And the fact is that we know that this appropriation is designed to be in harmony with you know, the appropriation or the ARP funds that had you know, been generously given to Guam. Madam Chair, this is also a local appropriation. That should not expire. And so we are not sure, you know, that something like that, you know, I'm not sure, and I don't think it should expire. So for that reason, Madam Chair, I will object to this amendment.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Is there anyone else on the Parkinson amendment who would like to speak?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Senator Barnett, you are recognized.
Sorry, ma'am. I just would, I'm just trying to understand this because we just heard testimony from GDOE about risk of them not being able to spend monies that have a deadline attached to them, and I felt like that was why these monies from the general fund were worth a little more, because there wasn't that pressure to spend them. So I would just ask the good author to, if he doesn't mind, to explain again.
Do you yield, Senator Parkinson, to explain why you would want this to expire so quickly, even before the ARP funding expires?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to explain. For one, it's, you know, we talk about this as an emergency. And I don't know about you, but if an emergency, I would like to spend my emergency money in the same year that I got it. And if I'm not, how much of an emergency is it really? And the reason I like this amendment, because it's a win-win situation for us. One, it encourages the giddy up of GDOE to get this money spent, but at the same time, if it goes back to the general fund, we are in a position to take that same money and give them the continuing appropriations that they requested while having a funding source that we know is untouched.
Senator Barnett, does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I would just counter, ma'am, that, you know, a lot of times when money goes back into the general fund, it disappears never to be seen again. Thank you.
You're welcome, Senator Barnett. Anyone else would like to speak? Okay, Speaker Therese Terlaje, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the mover of this amendment's intention, because that was my legislation that proffered $5 million in food aid that has still not been distributed. And every time we did follow-up hearings, there was a different reason why that food aid was not distributed. You know, stemming from BBMR not distributing the money to then procurement issues. And the most recent thing I found out after hearing from Public Health that it was at the AGs, it was awarded. Now I'm being told they're starting from scrap because the procurement has to be redone. So, but for these funds, so I understand why we want to put the fire under, you know, the agencies to act, and we want to, I don't really want to get that $5 million back. I still think the food is necessary. So, but my issue with this amendment is we're talking about terms that involve capital improvement projects, right? So capital improvement projects are necessarily longer term, most of them, right? We're fixing roofs. You can't pay the whole project up front. You're going to pay it, probably some in the beginning, maybe some in the middle, and some in the end. But the amendment says that the funds must all be expended by the end of FY23. So in 6 months, the funds must all be expended. But what we really want is for Public Health to enter into these contracts, encumber, allot these funds for these capital improvement like they're doing, and make sure that these projects begin, right? Just begin. And hopefully, if they do their procurement and their contracting correctly, they will have natural endings to them. But I don't think that they will all naturally end. I'm not sure the roof projects will end by the end of fiscal year 2023, which is in 6 months. I'm not sure about those types of things. And so, because we're using the word expended, I think that puts a real limit on them as opposed to encumbered or allotted or any other thing. And the other thing is, you know, similarly with the ARP funds were not forced to be used in 6 months. They gave them a couple years because they intended them to be used for big projects and to make a plan prior to expending those funds as best possible. So I just don't want to see an automatic transfer back when they can't expend the funds. I think we can follow up and make sure that they're making good plans and they have allocated and encumbered these funds. And then we can decide whether we want to repeal the appropriation because they're not doing it or not, right? But I think to tell them in advance they can't even plan long-term. This is one of the things DOE has complained about over the years, is we cannot fix a roof if our funds expire at the end of the fiscal year and we're in the middle of that project, right? Or something. So they have to be able, I think, we're talking about these types of projects to just simply plan for a longer term. So I wouldn't support this amendment because the end of fiscal year 2023 is in 6 months. I do expect them to encumber these monies, have a plan for their use, and show us how it's going to supplement the ARP funds. But I don't want to cut their legs off just as they're rolling them all out. So thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Speaker Terlaje. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the Parkinson amendment? If there is none, Senator Parkinson, would you like to close?
No, ma'am, I yield my time to close.
Okay. So there has been an amendment, there has been an objection to the Parkinson amendment. So all those in favor of Senator Parkinson's amendment, please raise your hand. Amendment fails. Senator Parkinson, you're still recognized on your next amendment, or has that been pulled back?
Madam Chair, I believe that was my only amendment.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Senator Parkinson. So at this time, if there's no more other amendments on the floor, which I haven't received any more, so we just have...
I apologize, Madam Chair, I was mistaken. There is another amendment.
Okay, Senator Parkinson, Yeah, I thought you had two. I had two
Yeah.
in my hand for you. So this is on line 1, page 2. Is that the other amendment, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I apologize. I thought they were put together, and
I see. No problem. Senator Parkinson, you are recognized on your second amendment.
for my second amendment for Bill number 32-37 COR, it is an amendment to line 1, page 2, to add a new section 3 to Bill number 32-37 to read, Section 3, expenditures and appropriations, the sum of $30 million shall only be used after any and all federal funds for capital improvement projects have been exhausted. And this is just kind of tying into my last amendment is, you know, I wanted to get some giddy up in the step of GDOE. And one of the things I had asked them about during the committee of the whole was how much money they had available. And they are sitting on a dragon's hoard of $100 million right now. $103 million, I believe is what it was. And so I am a big fan of education. I am public schools my entire life, JQ San Miguel, Jose Arias, GW, so I support the schools getting this money, but at the same token, it would be irresponsible of us to start expending local funds when we still have federal dollars available to us. So this amendment is to make sure that we keep that fire under GDOE and tell them that we will give you this money, but you got to make sure you mind your P's and Q's and spend all of the federal dollars you already have left. It is unacceptable if any of that federal dollars gets sent back and we find ourselves having to spend local dollars because they couldn't, you know, didn't have the right incentive and leverage to motivate them in the right direction. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. On the second amendment from Senator Parkinson, would anybody like to speak on this amendment?
I'm just curious.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator San Agustin, you recognized?
His second amendment is about the 30 million, but I know when I walked out to try to get the numbers, we're at the 20 million. So which one are we, I mean, I hate to hear his amendment when we still need to settle the 20 million because it'll adjust the 30 to 20. Then maybe his amendment will change from 30, it will say 20. That's something to consider.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm in the same situation as Speaker Terlaje. If this amendment were to pass, it would require technical correction from 30 to 20 million.
Okay, if the amendment should pass, there would be a technical correction being made to adjust the amendment from 30 to 20 million for an adjustment. And what the amendment does is it basically doesn't allow GDOE to utilize any of this funds until they spend all the federal funding. So anyone else would like to speak? Senator Barnett, you are recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. Just with all due respect, I would only again like to reiterate what I had stated on the record in speaking with the acting superintendent, Judy Wampat, who had informed me that they wanted to be allowed to use this money, this $30 million in general fund revenues for facilities to set aside from ARP because the ARP is limited, and they were requesting to be able to use this general fund money to help with areas not included in CIP like gyms, playgrounds, sports fields, walkway coverings, exterior sewage piping, fencing, etc. These projects are not part of the ARP monies, and so I would just, again, in just my defense of education, state that I'm not sure if these projects would be able to wait until any and all federal funds for capital improvements have been exhausted, and because the deadline for that is the end of next year. And so if we're going to put a timeline on these general fund monies and say that they can't be spent until all the federal funds have been exhausted, then again, I would just want to state my concern on the record that we wouldn't be able to get to my objection on the record, that we wouldn't be able to get to a lot of these projects that the acting superintendent has told me that they want to be able to get to at the same time that they're using the ARP funds to address the CIP projects, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. There has been an objection. We're going to continue to move on with this amendment for any of those who would like to speak on this amendment. If there is no other one like to speak on this amendment, would you like to close or you yield your time, Senator Parkinson?
No, I'd like to speak on this one. I take Superintendent Judy Wonpat's point about wanting to use some of these local funds for projects immediately. I do. But at the same time, Madam Chair, $103 million they have right now, and it just seems irresponsible to begin spending local funds when that has not been expended, and the possibility of them having to return those funds. I understand what Senator Barnett and others in these body have said about putting a time limit on the fiscal year. I point well taken. However, this does not put a timeline on DOE at all. It just puts an order. It just says spend everything else first. And so, you know, I don't want to be in a position where we're going to be calling in DOE and having a public hearing saying, why'd you guys give back $60 million and spend $30 million or $20 million locally when you could have spent the ARP money that you gave back? And so, you know, to Speaker Terlaje's point, you know, sure, we could call these people back for the oversight in terms of making sure they spent it, but I recognize that the government is a big ship, and sometimes it takes a long time to turn this ship. And the best thing to do is to put in the proper incentives now so we get the behavior we desire. And the behavior I desire is I would like to see all these federal funds expended before we spend a penny of local dollars, because that's what that's for. That's what that money it was intended to. And so it's like we won the lottery here, but we still want to keep our day job and, you know, pay all of our bills with local funds when you have this huge windfall. So it just seems like a complete waste and a missed opportunity, a lost opportunity cost to be using local funds when we have $103 million. I yield my time, Madam Chair. Thank you for your time.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. I just because I wasn't. I'm sorry, ma'am. I just wanted to because I didn't do it right. Point of information, ma'am.
Okay, you're
Thank
recognized, Senator
Barnett. I'm so
Barnett.
sorry. I really don't want to be rude, but I just wasn't sure if my objection to the amendment was properly stated.
Okay,
But
yes,
you
it was
just
properly stated.
Okay, just making sure
I
that
heard you
again,
loud and
I
clear.
objected to it because
Right.
of what the, okay, so thank you, ma'am, sorry.
Absolutely heard you with that objection. So now we're going to vote on this amendment. There was an objection, and it is on the Parkinson amendment with technical changes when needed. Okay, so all those in favor of the Parkinson amendment, his second amendment, please raise your hand. Okay, amendment fails. Okay, I think we've exhausted all those amendments. However, we had set aside Speaker Therese Terlaje's amendment. I believe Senator Snogestein has some information. So I'll allow you, Senator Snogestein, recognize you, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of the 20 million that the speaker introduced, you would all find in your Google Drive the format. All right? Please look at your Google Drive. You'll find, and so I can make sure everybody knows where we're at. If you look on the first page, you'll find under E, Department Changes, the 2% rainy day fund will increase by 400,000. And then you'll find on the last page, the pharmaceutical will go up by 950, 744, which gives you a total of, out of the 20 million, it becomes 21,358,877. Okay? That's the information. I just provide the information. If my numbers are off, then maybe by only a couple 100,000, but it should be pretty accurate. Thank you.
Okay, Senator, thank you so much for that information and for your staff putting it together. I'd like to recognize Speaker Terlaje.
Yeah, I would, in light of that, amend my amendment. Again, this is the two-paragraph amendment, sections 4 and section 5 of the bill, adding a new section 5. And I would also add that legal work with OFB to make technical changes to the other parts of the bill, including the pharmaceutical fund, the rainy day fund, and the other amounts.
Madam
Senator
Chair,
Snuggetsing, you're recognized.
I would recommend that, because this is providing the Google Drive, if the speaker like, just attach this and make this be the attachment to her amendment, and then it makes it whole, and it's
Okay,
complete.
so
Okay.
we're going to
Pause, recess.
we can just simplify it and just, if nobody has any objections, to attach this document to the amendment to clarify, or, let's simplify it. Let's just take a 1-minute recess, start the clock, 1 minute, and we are going to see how we're going to accept this amendment with any changes to it. Okay, so we'll take a 1-minute recess. Committee of the Whole is back in order. Speaker Terlaje, you're recognized, please.
I want to thank the chair of OFB and Appropriations for pointing out and calculating the changes that would be necessary if the 30 million is amended, as I'm proffering, to 20 million for FY23. And so the corresponding amendments that would be required in the bill, they have calculated, and they are willing to work with OFB and the legal to ensure that the bill is corrected technically if this passes. So I would add that as that in addition to, as written here, that OFB and legal be allowed to make technical corresponding changes to the numbers in the bill.
Okay, so I'm just going to call. Is there any objection to that change or that technical corrections being made by OFB and legal? There's no objection. Okay.
So on the
Speaker, on the amendment
yeah.
itself, it's
I'm
already
done.
passed. Are you good?
No, now they're going to speak on the
Yeah,
amendment.
yeah. Okay. So Speaker Terlaje, we're on the main menu. I mean, on the main amendment. Okay. So does anybody want to speak on the main amendment?
JSA.
Anybody?
He had-
As amended.
Yeah, he had the floor. Yeah.
Okay. Hati?
I'd like to speak on the amendment.
JSA? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll wait till, okay. Senator Augustine we'll wait for him to come back, so I'll just move on. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on the amendment as amended? Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to speak up in favor of this amendment. Really, I just want to commend this body as a whole and the speaker for proffering this amendment, because as far as I'm concerned, where I'm sitting, this is the first honest-to-God compromise this body has had. I stand in support of this amendment because by amending the amount down to 20 million, I believe that will allow us to achieve both goals of providing for the schools and helping them with their human capital needs by allowing funding for the GPP plan to be available as an alternate source. And so, again, this is probably the first time this body has had a real honest-to-God compromise, and I thank Senator Therese Terlaje for proffering this amendment and allowing for both solutions to be something that could be done. You know, I never thought I'd see the day, but I just wanted to say I'm proud of all of us. So congrats on our first honest-to-God compromise. Let's get the teacher paid. Let's get the schools fixed, and let's all kumbaya together. I yield my time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on the amendment as amended? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. I would just like to ask, just for clarity's sake, I mean, it does look pretty simple to understand, but you know, I have a problem departing from the 30 million, so I want to ensure that the intent of this body and this measure is preserved. Because I do see 20 million, but if the author could just please clarify, we're still given the 30 million, right?
Speaker Terlaje, do you yield to the question, please?
Yes, so the total is still 30 million. The funding sources are different. So we split the 20 and the 10, but they should still receive 30 million. They should still be able to use all of that 30 million to prepare the schools for opening.
Thank you. In that case, ma'am, I stand in full support of this amendment, and I also do recognize that at the onset of this emergency session, I know there was a lot of outside influence and pressure, but I have maintained that we felt that, you know, through hard work and collaboration, we would be able to accomplish both of the very important goals that are before this body on different plates, ma'am. So I, again, stand in support of this amendment.
Sijus Masi, Senator Barnett. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the Terlaje amendment as amended? Senator Nicholas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we're all kumbayaing, I support this amendment.
Si Diyos Masi, Senator San Nicolas. If there's no one else, Speaker Terlaje, would you like to close?
Just to thank my colleagues for their support. I really much appreciate that. And yes, and we are very urgent in our, trying to get this money to DOE. I really do believe DOE has made huge progress in the last few months that we haven't seen in some of the last few years. And I don't want to stop that momentum. I want them to use it and go all the way together with the complaints by the parents, the teachers, improve these conditions and really do our best with this perfect storm that we have in federal funds and local funds. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Speaker Terlaje. So is there any objection to the Speaker Terlaje amendment as amended? No objection? Amendment passes. Colleagues, we have...
Madam Chair, may I just add that the technical changes also be, so our previous amendment that, for the purpose of the funds also be added to this new Section 5 that we just passed.
Okay. Are there any objections to that? Seeing no objections, so ordered. Colleagues, we have exhausted the amendments and fulfilled our 3 rounds, so we are going to recess for 7, 8, rise out of the committee of the whole.
All rise.
To 9 o'clock this evening to come back
Madam
so
Chair.
that we can engross the bill and vote this evening on the bill.
Madam Chair.
8:30, I'm sorry,
Madam Chair,
8:30.
point of
Yes,
information.
Sure, Senator
Please
Snogestein.
ask the author to ask the chair that we rise with the recommendation that the committee of the whole, that it be sent to the third reading file so that when we come back, you immediately, you can make the motion so it can go to the voting file. Otherwise, whatever we're doing right now, it doesn't move anywhere. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Senator
Ma'am, point
Snogestein, for
of inquiry.
Senator Barnett, you're
I'm
recognized.
sorry, but I would like to add my name as a co-sponsor to this bill. Do I do this now or later?
The author of the legislation can make that amendment, actually,
Oh, thank you.
if there's anyone else. Thank you, Senator Barnett. You know what? Before we rise out of the committee of the whole, I'll allow the author of this legislation. Actually, I apologize, Senator Dueñas. This is my first time being a chair up here, so I hope I was fast enough for all you guys not falling asleep back there. But so, Senator Dueñas, please close on your measure, and then we can rise out of the committee of the whole. And our plan is to come back at 8:30 this evening to vote on the bill. Okay? Thank you.
Madam Chair, due to the time, I would normally have some extenuous comments, but I will not do that because we'll be coming back to vote, Madam Chair. But it's truly been an honor to have worked on this piece of legislation, the Committee of the Whole. And at this point in time, because I got to get home and feed my dog, I'll just get through this really quickly. At this point in time, Madam Speaker, I would first Madam Chair, I'd like to add co-sponsors. And so because Senator Lujan asked me first, I would like to put Senator Lujan as the first co-sponsor. And Senator Barnett, days ago, I'm sorry, Senator Barnett, but you will be...
You know what, I thought about asking you if that's worth anything.
Can I be on there? I fight evil too.
The third co-sponsor, and all my Republican colleagues did ask me, and I'm going to put the entire body, but I'm going to start with, after Senator Barnett, it'll be Senator Frank Blas Jr., as well as Senator Telo Taitague, Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Tom Fisher, and then, of course, Speaker Therese Terlaje, and Sabina Perez, and then all of the rest of the body. Okay, and with the exception of Senator Joseph Augustine, who has wished to not be a co-sponsor.
They're staying on, bro.
Okay, you know what, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, I will just then go with the individuals that I had identified.
Okay, that sounds good.
And then, Madam Chair, at this point in time, I would like to propose that we rise from the Committee of the Whole.
First on the motion to add those as co-sponsors, are there any objections? No objections? So ordered.
Madam Chair, at this time, after having closed on the bill and accepted the amendments and the bill having been amended in Committee of the Whole, I would like to take this time to say we would like to rise with all the amendments intact and everything that we did in Committee of the Whole on Bill 3237. And then, of course, I would be proffering to put it down to the voting file. With the
Okay.
recommendation to do pass.
To do pass. Okay, we are going to rise out of the Committee of the Whole and return back at 8:30 to vote.
Can we do 9?
8:30 to vote.
Voting, we have to vote on that motion.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let me go ahead and do the voting on the motion to rise out of Committee of the Whole. Is there any objections? No objections to rise out of Committee of the Whole, so ordered, and we will return at 8:30 to vote.
We got to put it down first, though, so let the speaker go up.
Never mind. Never mind. Okay, thank you. We're going to rise at Committee of the Whole.
Emina 37, the legislature in Guam is back from recess and back from the Committee of the Whole. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, the Committee of the Whole recommends that the Bill 32-37 be sent to the third reading file, as recommended by the Committee of the Whole.
All right, on that motion to accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole on Bill number 32-37 COR as amended in the Committee of the Whole and move the bill to the third reading file. Is there any objection?
No objection.
Seeing no objection, motion passes. The bills move to third reading. We will recess now for engrossment of the three bills, and we will resume at 8:30 for voting. 8:30.